Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94 here, back with another reaction video. Today, we finna react to the pandemic era of WWE was weird. Yeah, the pandemic era of WWE, it started off pretty bad. Having no fans in attendance, WrestleMania was weird, especially the women matches. Oh my god. Those women matches were hard to sit through because all you heard was uh. That's all you heard. You heard women just grunting and shit, and it's like, yo, that's not good. But anyways, though, the pandemic era of WWE was kind of weird until they got to the Thunderdome and they put the live audience audio over it for the meanwhile, which helped a lot. I wish they would have did that sooner for WrestleMania, but I understand at the time we were in uncharted territory. We never been through this type of situation before, so I understand the WWE was just doing whatever the fuck they could to get this shit to work the way they wanted it to. So I completely understand it from the WWE's perspective, and yeah, man. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. The pandemic era of WWE. The only good thing about it was we got a heel Roman Reigns, and man, was that a great run. Let's get right into it though. RP to Bray Wyatt though.
I recently made a video looking back at 2017 to 2019 and argued that it was the worst period in WWE history,
Terrible.
at least
Fucking
creatively.
terrible.
And that got me thinking about the years that came next. So let's go back to just before the pandemic in 2020. The Royal Rumble in January was a great start to the year. It was an event that I remember very positively because it felt like a turning point. Yes, we had to suffer through Roman Reigns versus Baron Corbin and Charlotte.
The best part about that Royal Rumble was Edge coming out. Even though you niggas spoiled it. You niggas spoiled it saying that, oh, Edge is coming back. Edge is coming back. Y'all niggas spoiled it, but still, just seeing him come out, just hearing that, you think you know me. On this day. And then just seeing him come out with the energy and the excitement. Bro. Chef's kiss, bro. You can't replicate energy like that, bro. That was an amazing moment right there.
Getting the win in the Rumble, which was a totally predictable result, but there was a lot of great stuff on this show. Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt had a fantastic strap match for the Universal title, and Bianca Belair looked like a real superstar in the Women's Royal Rumble match. Edge made his triumphant return to WWE after 8 years away, and it was great to see Drew McIntyre get the win in the big match, last eliminating none other than Roman Reigns. Yes, it felt like WWE had turned a corner as the show went off the air. But of course, it just couldn't last. In February, Goldberg popped back up and the WWE universe collectively groaned. Just as we thought that WWE was getting back on track with the character of Bray Wyatt, they dashed their hopes and dreams. Oldberg, aged 53 at the time, squashed the Fiend in just 3 minutes.
Destroyed the entire character.
Universal Champion. Also
destroyed the entire character of the Fiend. The Fiend's character, I feel like, was destroyed on that night. Because how do you lose to an old man like that?
At Super Showdown, yet another match between Baron Corbin and Roman Reigns, and Brock Lesnar squashed Ricochet in 90 seconds for the WWE title. But in many ways, the COVID pandemic forced WWE to break the status quo. The World Health Organization officially declared COVID-19 as a pandemic on March the 11th, 2020, and WWE moved incredibly quickly. It was Vince McMahon versus the pandemic, at least metaphorically, and he was determined not to go down, especially with WrestleMania 36 on the horizon. The WWE Performance Center in Florida became base of operations for their television shows and premium live events. The fact that they could no longer have a live crowd gave the shows an interesting novelty to begin with. Those first few episodes of Raw and SmackDown were light on actual wrestling and instead featured promos and reruns of matches from the Royal Rumble and the Elimination Chamber. As countries around the world started to go into lockdown and employees of businesses were starting to work from home, it was touch and go for WWE. This was a business that relied on human contact after all, but luckily Vince McMahon had contacts in high places, specifically the Republican Party in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis deemed WWE to be an essential business, and so the show could go on, at least in a limited capacity. And WrestleMania 36 was actually quite good, all things considered. They moved it from a 70,000 seat stadium to the Performance Center, where it was in front of no fans at all, and in order to reduce the amount of crew that was needed, they spread the show over 2 separate nights. WrestleMania had been getting longer and longer every year, so this was a welcome change to the format. To minimise the awkwardness of there being no fans in the arena, they improvised and innovated. The cinematic Boneyard match between AJ Styles and The Undertaker was an entertaining way for the dead man to finally retire that didn't involve him trying to wrestle a 20-minute match. The other cinematic match on the card was the Firefly Funhouse that saw John Cena enter the mind of Bray Wyatt. In fact, it was less of a match and more of a psychological horror movie, with The Fiend confronting Cena with the darkest moments and harshest criticisms about his career. And then there was the last man standing match between Edge and Randy Orton. This one went all over the Performance Center and had some great moments. It was an enjoyable match, but far too long at over 36 minutes.
But it was creative.
Also on
they
the
had
card,
to get creative.
Braun Strowman replaced Roman.
That was the thing, though. They had to get creative. There was no fan, so you had to get creative. And still, that was a good match, though. I think that was the best match of that entire WrestleMania that year.
Reigns in his match against Goldberg for the Universal title. Thankfully, they kept it short, and Strowman beat Goldberg for the belt in just 2 minutes. And in the main event, Drew McIntyre walked out as new WWE champion. Fans were left on a high after such a great WrestleMania, and just like after the Royal Rumble, they were positive that WWE was about to reinvent itself, even in these difficult times. But we were mistaken. Not even in a global pandemic are we allowed to have nice things.
Not at all.
Drew McIntyre's championship reign started off. Vince McMahon still seemed to be stuck in the habit of half-heartedly making guys the WWE champion and then not giving them a full push. He'd done exactly the same with the likes of Kofi Kingston, Dean Ambrose and Bray Wyatt in the years before. Although there was one other first-time WWE champion during the pandemic who did really well, and that was Bobby Lashley. He won the title from The Miz, and that was basically a squash match that set the tone for his entire 195-day reign, because unlike with Drew McIntyre, Lashley was booked really strong. He beat McIntyre in a series of matches and then defended the belt against the likes of Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, Goldberg and Randy Orton. He also beat plenty of other superstars in non-title matches at the time. He was booked incredibly strongly. Lashley was also part of the Hurt Business, who for me was one of the best heel factions in WWE history.
No, the best faction of this era before the bloodline was fully formed out. Because y'all gotta remember, the bloodline was at a civil war. It was Jey Uso versus Roman. Jimmy was still injured at the time. Solo was still in NXT. And Roman was just by himself at that point. So the bloodline didn't happen yet. But let's keep it real though. The Hurt Business was the best thing going. And Vince, let's just say I'm happy that this nigga Vince don't run shit over here no more.
MVP, Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander stood alongside Lashley in the group, and they had some great matches with the likes of the New Day in 2020. I also think Bayley came into her own during the pandemic era. She'd had a really tough start on the main roster, especially in that terrible feud with Alexa Bliss, but then she turned heel and won the Women's Championship in October 2019. Nobody expected Bayley to be so effective as a heel, but she was brilliant at it. She ended up holding that title for over a year, and it really was the making of her. But it was also her tag team and subsequent feud with Sasha Banks that would end up being really memorable. With Becky Lynch on maternity leave, it felt like these ladies were propping up the women's division in terms of entertainment. They won the tag team titles in May 2020, and then later in the year they feuded against each other for the women's title. Bayley and Sasha were a real pleasure to watch during the pandemic. But sadly, the other positives in COVID-era WWE were few and far between. WWE persevered with other cinematic style matches like the ones we saw at WrestleMania, but sadly, the quality dropped off a cliff in the year after. We were subjected to utter nonsense like the swamp fight between Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman at Extreme Rules in July. It was hoped that Strowman would be solidified as a main event superstar in 2020, especially after beating Goldberg for the Universal title, but he lost all credibility in his feud with Bray Wyatt. And Wyatt himself suffered with terrible booking too. He was paired with Alexa Bliss, who had developed supernatural powers of the cringeworthy kind. The ongoing feud between Wyatt and Randy Orton dragged on into 2020, with Orton literally setting the Fiend on fire in the middle of the ring. There was sometimes a sense that WWE were panicking that things weren't exciting enough without the live crowd. For example, they gave the match between Randy Orton and Edge the ridiculous tagline of the greatest wrestling match ever before it had even happened. And while it was a very good wrestling match, it certainly wasn't the greatest match ever, and it probably wasn't even in the top 100. Extreme Rules was rebranded as The Horror Show, and the match between Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins was supposed to be an eye for an eye. They literally pushed the match as if someone was actually going to lose their eye, and the match finished with a special effect that suggested Mysterio's eye had genuinely been extracted. A change to the format was most certainly needed, and in August 2020, we got one. WWE introduced the Thunderdome, which was first hosted at the Amway Center in Orlando. This new setup aimed to recreate the atmosphere of live events by using LED boards that displayed live video feeds of fans watching around the world. They also pumped in crowd noise, and the Thunderdome was a great novelty and a real refreshment for a couple of weeks.
It was needed.
But we still couldn't escape the bad booking. Take Retribution, for example. This bunch of absolute clowns showed up on Raw and started causing havoc. They claimed to be unhappy products of WWE's developmental system, and they were going to destroy the company from the inside. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yes, it was the age-old story, but this time it was executed worse than ever. Most of these guys had been in NXT under different names, but here they were given ridiculous titles like Slapjack, T-Bar and Mace. It must have taken Vince McMahon all of a minute to come up with those terrible names. And they were never a credible threat because they just kept on losing matches. They lost match after match, week after week. And none of these promising young wrestlers benefited from this storyline. Shane McMahon introduced Raw Underground in August 2020 in an attempt to add some spice to the show. This was supposed to be like an underground fight club, which
it was really good at first. The first couple of episodes of this was good, but then after a while, it was like, turn this shit off.
Appeared to be in a basement and there was no ring. The format fell flat on its face for several reasons. Firstly, they never fully explained the rules. Secondly, even if we knew what was going on, nobody wants to watch fake MMA while watching a pro wrestling show.
And all we wanted was Brock Lesnar to appear there. That's all we wanted. It was like, man, have Brock Lesnar go in there and whoop some ass. You know what I'm saying? Get Shayna Baszler in there. Get some actual MMA. You got actual MMA fighters. They had Matt Riddle at the time. Get them dudes in there and let them go crazy. But no. Shit was terrible.
And the other problem was the constant camera cuts. They were headache-inducing. Thankfully, Raw Underground was cancelled after a couple of months. As the global situation started to improve, WWE started to let the fans back in. A limited number of fans were in attendance for WrestleMania 37, and by July, the crowd was back for good. Ultimately, there were very few positive changes to WWE thanks to the pandemic. I mean, we've had 2-night WrestleManias ever since, which is certainly a good thing, and when Roman Reigns returned, he came back as a heel, which was also a very good thing. But otherwise, it was back to business as usual. Vince McMahon got back to his old ways of mass firing his talent at the drop of a hat in 2021. They released over 80 wrestlers during this period, including popular superstars like Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, Aleister Black and Mickie James. Fans around the world groaned at yet another WrestleMania main event between Lesnar and Roman Reigns. The only way WWE was ever going to change for the better would be once Vince McMahon had left the business. And thankfully, we wouldn't have to wait too long.
So I'm guessing that's going to be the next video. The 2002 year. The year of 2002. Oh boy. Not 2002, but 2022. Oh boy. 2022. WWE was in a weird place, especially when the Vince allegations came up. Oh man. But anyway, so that's just going to about do it for this one, man. The pandemic era was definitely weird, man. It had its ups, it had its downs. The only good thing I will say we got out of that was a heel Roman Reigns, because man, Roman Reigns took the help. He put the company on his back throughout all the shenanigans that Vince was doing around this time. Salute to Roman Reigns, bro, because he carried this shit, bro, going forward. But anyways, though, that's just gonna about do it for this one, man. I will see you all in the next video. Till then, peace out.